Guess what, everybody? We have a name. Welcome in to The Right Stuff Blood Bowl podcast, sponsored by Empire Games.
We're back from hiatus. It took us 2 weeks to figure out a name.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it took us 3 months at this point, if we're being honest.
Well, yeah, we have a lot to fill in. We missed last week. That was because we were trying to wait until all of the season games had been played before we could talk about it. But we also ended up playing in a couple of tournaments as well that we've got some tournament reports on. So, Destination Dollywood and Panthers Cup are in the rearview mirror now.
Yeah. Coming off a season that was fairly underwhelming on my part. I'm glad to get some tournament reps in. It was a lot of fun. Do you just want to jump in?
I think it's worth mentioning that Tour Play has a new statistics section real fast. I wanted to briefly touch on that. Mm-hmm. I think it's very cool to go look at that, and that statistics section exists for all of the past leagues as well. So it's fun going back, and you can kind of see the story of the leagues getting more competitive as they move on. It's just really neat to look at. I'm glad that Tour Play hasn't just kind of rested on the laurels. They actually improve it. It's cool seeing an application improve over time. Hopefully they don't force feed us AI helpers in Tour Play. But other than that, I've enjoyed Tour Play just getting better. So,
what would the Tour Play equivalent of Clippy be?
What are the announcers' names from Blood Bowl?
Jim and Bob.
Jim and Bob, or whatever, right?
Something like that.
You know, it'd be like one of those. I see you're trying to random mutations. Are you sure you want to do that?
Yeah, statistics are super cool, and at least for when we're talking about the Panthers Cup, I want to talk a little bit about that, because that was a very interesting rule set, and it played out in the statistics in kind of an interesting way.
Yeah, it's probably we probably should just start with Panthers Cup. That was the most recent one. Mm-hmm. That was the one you just played in. Yeah. I'll need all that time to use my perfect recall to completely give you all. Let's see, 16 turns times 4 games, 64 or something like that. I'll give you the full play-by-play of all 64 turns after you run through Panthers Cup.
Yeah, you can find that 8-hour podcast on our Substack if you would like. It's a secret tier. You have to go through a lot of paywalls to be like, are you sure you want to listen to this? But yeah, Panthers Cup was this past weekend. It was over at Level Up Games in Duluth. That was my first time in the store. It was really, really nice store. Definitely, if you're in that area, go give it a visit. Ton of space. A little warm, but overall, it was a really good experience. 7 people from the local league went down. We were about a third of the tournament, and it was overall just a really fun 1 day, 3 rounds event. We were looking at the rule set, and it was very interesting the way that it was constructed. So really quick overview. Team value for building was 1,100, so a little bit less than you might see at your typical tournament like Dollywood, some of the others. Star players were not available to anyone above tier 4, so they just slightly shifted away from the typical Games Workshop tiers. There were 5 tiers of teams.
This is pretty common for tournaments. Yeah. When they're trying to make a little bit more nuanced tiers, they will go with 5 instead of just the Games Workshop 3. Mm-hmm. But
yeah, and the rules packet was set up in a way that was very beneficial for some of those lower tier teams. So you got extra skills, you got access to star players if you were tier 4 or 5, and that led to a somewhat skewed slate of teams.
I can imagine.
The biggest thing, looking into statistics and just looking into participation, is a third of the entries were stunties. It was very skewed towards stunties, just the way it's set up. Another big thing of the rule set was star players did not cost any skill allowance.
Yeah, and that's a huge departure from other tournaments, right? Because the thing is that even when you pay skill points for star players, there's still kind of a bargain, because usually they're bringing something to the table that you can't get on the roster of the team. And so giving up like 2 instances of block or tackle or leader or something like that to get something like Griff on a halfling team is totally fine. But being able to still take those skills and then also still take Griff is like really absurd.
Yeah. So that was super interesting to see. Like out of the 21 teams out there were only 2 tier 1 teams. Tier 1s were like very punished, which I can talk about when I get into my games. So the list I took was something I kind of brewed up a little bit based on the new tiers, because Nurgle was tier 4. Nurgle was a team that I've had for a while, played a season with it, did not go particularly well.
It's arguably the worst team in the game currently. Like, as the rules stand, Nurgle is probably the worst team.
Yes. So feeling the need to prove the haters wrong, and coming off a pretty decent weekend at Dollywood where I was pretty satisfied with performance, I wanted to do something a little bit different. I think Nurgle was one of the tier 4 teams, so you had a lot of skills to take and access to star players. So I decided to make a list, and it worked out pretty well. My list was, I had 4 bloaters, all of them had block. I had 3 pestigores, 2 had tackle, 1 had sure hands, 5 rotter linemen, and then Skitter as a star player. And in theory, when I was making the list, I built it in a way where I was like, Skitter just adds a new dimension to the team that you don't normally have. Where a lot of times, I think your typical Nurgle offensive drive is you try to go down the field, and then eventually something happens and you get stalled out and you just can't score. Skitter being able to grab the ball, kind of sit in the backfield until an avenue opens up was huge. And it worked out pretty well. Right. First round.
You don't have to make a whole lot of inroads on the opponent's half of their table for Skitter to score, right? You only need to get like 4 squares in, and then Skitter can take it the rest of the way.
Yeah, that was a big thing. It's just being able to keep the ball out of the fray. Because I think doing that, like, you freed up, or I felt very free in like making lots of decisions with the ball, because it's like Skitter is in the backfield, nobody can reach him. I can go ahead, throw all these blocks that I need to, get stuff going, try to free up space for him eventually, but I don't have to worry if there's a turnover randomly in here that all of a sudden the ball's in danger, which was a big thing because the list also, the way it was built, I could only fit 1 reroll, so that was like being very conservative with rerolls. If something did go wrong, like a double skull, it's like I just have to eat it. And knowing the ball was impossible to reach, and then having avenues to, like, if someone tried to get close to him, have someone be able to, like, you know, a pestigore single-handedly come in and like clear the way to run on the side was huge.
Yeah, that's like the thing the passing game gives Amazons. That's the thing that vampires excel at, is keeping the ball out of reach, right? Where something can go horribly wrong, you fail a dodge, but it's fine. Your ball is 2 squares away from your end zone, because your whole plan is to move the ball up and past the opponent's defense all in one go. Skitter lets you kind of do that with Nurgle that you didn't really have that access for before, right? So
yeah. So I'll do a quick game overview. I'm gonna write something up for this tournament as well as the Dollywood one to get a little bit more in depth. But round 1 I played against Gnomes with Maple and Cindy, and that was a pretty powerful list. The big thing was with the stunty teams, I think, you know, you're rolling lots of dice, whether it be for going for dodges or take routes or all those other things. You're just rolling a bunch of dice throughout the course of the game. And when you're rolling that many dice, you're going to start rolling 1s. And when you roll 1s on like a foul appearance, that can really have a huge impact on the game and kind of swing things, which happened over the course of the game. I think there was at least one tree blitz that stalled out because of foul appearance.
Yeah. I've always hated hitting bloaters with anybody with any kind of downside. It's the same with vampires, the same with everything, right? Where it's like, if I need a 2+ to activate the model, and then I need a 2+ to get past the foul appearance, that's just, you start getting to the point where you can't be mad if you fail this 3 or 4 times in a game, right? Like, it's just the number of dice you got to roll for it.
Yeah. And in the 2 practice games I played were both against stunty teams. And I felt pretty good about Nurgle into the stunty teams because of that element.
Yeah.
Also, just the incidental things that you get on the Nurgle roster is really good. Big one being Disturbing Presence.
Right.
In that matchup.
It throws off throw teammate. And that's like how stunties have a get out of jail free card in some matchups. Because you can just you save your rerolls not for the defensive drive, but to go for the turn 8 throw teammate. And Disturbing Presence just throws the math all off on that attempt. So.
Yeah. The big thing in the Gnome game was Disturbing Presence against Cindy. I was able to get a bloater into the backfield close to Cindy and then mark her with a Pestigore. And she ended up having to use her special super early. The bomb just scattered, fell down in front of her. And then she knocked herself out of the game and then got sent off because of the special. So that was just like a big incidental thing that you get with the Nurgle team that you wouldn't... Like, you were never taking Disturbing Presence as a tournament skill.
Right.
But the fact that you have it is just huge. So that game... Yeah, that was like pretty standard. Just kind of scrummed down. Skitter did his thing, just running in at the end of the first half and scoring. And the second half... There was a foul appearance that happened in front of the cage where he had like caged up with the trees and had like maple on one side, and he just couldn't. He like failed a foul appearance. Something else happened. He like failed a dodge, and then the ball was just ball carrier was open, and then just blocked it down. The ball scattered all over the place, and then it was able to just keep it from getting picked up and score. So it was just a 1-0 win.
Yeah.
Like, what I said was 1-0 is just like the perfect Nurgle game. So, yeah. That was the first game. Game 2, after lunch, we came back. I was playing Lizardmen. Lizardmen being one of the Tier 1 teams. And this, I think, was just a skill mismatch in terms of the actual skills you got to add to your players. So, he had 6 Sauruses, a Croxagore, and 4 Skinks, and
so just 11 players.
Yes, just 11. And with the way the skills broke out, he only had 3 Sauruses with block and a Croxagore with block.
Oh man!
So
no skills on the Skinks.
Correct.
No guard, no tackle, nothing like that. Man, yeah. That's miserable.
Yeah, I foul casualtied a Saurus on turn 1. So at that point, I was already up players. Like, my roster started with 13. And he was just already down, and did not get to score in the first half. Skitter actually died at the end of the first half, but the second half, it just came down to just not having that much block. Like, I was able to put the rookie Sauruses down very consistently, and eventually, like, you roll armor enough times, you're gonna get a stun.
Right. It's the counterintuitive thing about Sauruses. You see a Saurus 4 strength, 10 armor for league play, and you're like, this guy's never getting hurt. But you look at a Lizardmen roster, and the Sauruses are the ones who end up with piles of niggling injuries. Sauruses die at a disproportionate rate, and that's because like the stunty part for Skinks means they get taken out of the game but will die less often, right? Because they'll be KO'd easier. They'll be badly hurt sometimes, but Sauruses just get banged up a bunch. And during the course of the game, they'll come off the table. So.
Yep. End of that game, I killed the Croxagore, which, of course, does not get me a player. This is the only game that I could have gotten a player in for the Saurus and did not end up getting it. So, but the Pescara was just able to get the ball and kind of like run down and score at the end. So it was another 1-0 win. Talking with my opponent after the game, he's like, fairly new to the tournament scene. Are there any things you could like recommend? And I was like, really, the rule set just kind of it just really hurt you only being able to take the 4 skills.
The note that I wanted to put was that I took one look at the rule set and found myself disgusted by it. But I want to be clear that I'm not casting shade on the tournament organizer. Actually, one of the things I like about Tournament Blood Bowl is the variety of rule sets that are out there. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's cool when a rule set gets to spotlight some amount of the game that doesn't normally get that spotlight, right? Because you could say the Destination Dollywood rule set was really punishing on studies, right? Like there was not much of a reason to play them over tier 1 teams, whereas this Panthers Cup was like full spotlight on stunties, like a ton of advantages to playing them in this tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2-0 at this point in the tournament. Last round, played against local player, won. He was on Snotlings. He had Morg and Bomber. And it was just, overall, it was just like diced out of the game. I think
if Morg turns it on in a game, he's not easy to overcome if he starts peeling players. You find yourself at a strength disadvantage, and then you don't even have anything to challenge him on the table.
Yeah, that was kind of the thing. Like early in the game, he had blitzed someone, and I put a bloater just there because I was like, okay, a bloater is my best odds of him not being able to hit something. Like if he just randomly rolls a 1, I might be able to get away with having this bloater here for a turn.
It's harder for him to 3 dice, and when you can keep Morg from 3 dicing, and you give him a couple of rolls to make, you can dampen his effectiveness in a game.
Yeah. So I was going for it, but then he casualtied the bloater right. Immediately. It was. Yeah, I think that game I'd probably put that in above 99th percentile of dice. And Juan got 2-0. I think if it had been in the 90th percentile of dice, it would have been an even game. I think if dice had averaged out between the two of us, I would have felt very comfortable in that game, kind of engaging in my game plan. But I do think that game for me highlighted some of the issues with the way that I think that list was the stress test of the rule set. Being able to take multiple star players, getting your max roster, all those other things. But to me, it also highlighted some things that I'm not the biggest fan of the current construction of the Snotling.
Yeah, I have long been a vocal opponent of the Snotling team. I know people think the team is a joke or whatever, but I don't know. I think you just play against the team a couple of times, play against people who really push the team to its limit, and you will understand how broken that team is in many ways. I have long said that the Snotling player is too cheap on the roster. 15K is a disgusting bargain for what you get, and despite the fact that they're quotations easy to kill, they don't die at the rate they really need to. And honestly, I think the fact that they can dodge everywhere on a 2+ is just really gross. When I played in the Wii Warriors, which is probably the tournament that's the closest analog to this Panthers Cup thing, Snotlings overperformed in that tournament for sure. And I was playing a lot of diving tackle just because I was tired of Snotlings. So
lost that one, but overall it was a really solid.
Yeah, Juan went on to win the tournament, right? Yeah. So if you're gonna losing to the person who wins the tournament, it's not a bad way to go, right? Because at least you were in the conversation.
Yeah. Based on strength of record, I was 4th, but they did some different tiebreakers for that. So, but yeah, it was a really good weekend overall. Everyone that went went from Empire did really well. The overall record for the squad was 14-1-6.
That's pretty good, yeah.
So that's a super solid performance. It's like, 60% win rate. So
yeah.
It was a really good weekend. Looking forward to going down there again for another thing. The prevailing thought of the ride back was you will never see this rule set again.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I would not necessarily complain, but I felt like I took a list that I wanted to try out, and I think it worked out. So
right,
all this feels good.
Yeah, yeah. I guess we can talk about Dollywood now, and kind of recap that as well, because we both went to that one.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say that this tournament appeared to be doomed and cursed from several months back, and so I think it's worth commending Ken for the job that he did there. This was the first tournament that he had kind of like helped organize, and he ended up kind of like stepping into the organizational role when the original organizer went MIA, and so Ken kind of found himself taking over this, and when we chatted with him, he had wanted to get into Blood Bowl organizing. He kind of wanted to do it on his own terms, and so he ended up not getting the chance to do that because he ended up having to kind of like take over this one when some stuff had gone wrong, and so obviously not the ideal circumstances, but I think ultimately a lot of fun was had by all. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, I mean, this was a team tournament, and my team was Sean and Barbie from the local team. Mm-hmm. You ended up in a funny situation.
Yeah, so originally our team was supposed to be myself, Juan, and Wayne, but then due to some last-second circumstances that popped up, Wayne was not able to make the trip, so we got teamed up with a person who had shown some interest in jumping in at the last minute, and it just happened to work out where he could come and play. It was Jim. Was super cool. We were not really knowing what to expect from someone who was like able to come in. Obviously we saw his username in Discord was Wah, so we were expecting some flavor of orcs, but after talking, he said he was going to play Lizardmen, so we were like, okay, cool. It was super great. We got to meet him, talk a little bit before the tournament, and then our team ended up getting the bye in the first round due to other cursed circumstances, but we got to get a practice game in, and that, I think, really helped kind of get the expectations set up for the tournament, and overall, it was really good. He was a great teammate.
Yeah, and from what he was saying, he's planning on coming down for the 7th tournament, mm-hmm. Which I guess we probably should have promoted at the beginning of the podcast, but we have a 7th tournament coming up this weekend. If you happen to be listening to this to the week of April the 28th through May the 2nd, if you're listening to it during this time frame, we've got a 7th tournament here at the store on Saturday, May the 3rd. Which is also free comic book day, so you can get some free comics and play some Blood Bowl. Mm-hmm. My team, we started off with a round loss, which I think was fine because we played against I think his name is John Lackey, mm-hmm. Who's probably one of the best players in the United States right now. His team was Dark Elves. Was it Dark Elves, Lizardmen? Orcs, yeah. Which I think is like something to expect at an environment like this. You weren't really incentivized to play teams from different tiers. And so I played in round 1. I was playing vampires. I kind of covered what my list was on the last episode. And I was pretty happy with my list. And that game boiled down to me not getting lucky at the right time and him not getting unlucky at the wrong time. And so he was able to... I actually got hit with a timeout at the start of the second half. We were tied at the end of the first half, 1-1. I got the ball first, and I scored pretty fast. I just opted to take the touchdown, and because I think playing defense with vampires is really powerful. You're like forcing your opponent to make tough decisions to protect the ball. And I was still kind of like learning his play style and how he was like working with the Dark Elves. And I didn't get super aggressive. I was trying to limit my bloodlust checks, so I like intentionally didn't activate vampire several times. And so I wasn't able to. I think I put the ball on the ground somewhere in that drive, but I wasn't able to recover the ball. And so he was able to just kind of like make a dodge with the Witch Elf, pick it up, and score. And so in the second half, he ended up managing to stall the whole time. And I didn't do any practice on like a one turn with vampires. I had like an opportunity to go for it. And I didn't know how to set it up for it. And so I just kind of set it up. And I didn't roll like quick snap. I think the setup I had required like a quick snap to be rolled on the drive. And so he ended up winning the game 2-1. I did put the ball on the ground during the during that drive a couple of times, but the bounces were always like towards elves and away from where my team was. And so and he didn't ever like snake a dodge. There were a lot of things where I had one particularly bad turn where like I think I bloodlusted 3 vampires, and I think 2 of those were 3 rerolls. And so I ended up taking out like 3 of my tackle zones on that turn. I think I like bit 2 thralls and maybe let the 3rd vampire bloodlust, and so that gave my defense enough pores for the elves to just kind of like filter through and get into the backfield. And so it was one of those. I didn't feel bad losing that game. Like I said, I didn't get lucky enough at the right time to just win the game. And it's one of those where he said a couple times where it was like, Snake Eyes here and the game is just over for me. So I don't feel too bad about a loss like that. Sean won his game and Barbie lost her game. So we ended up with a round loss for the team. And that was our round 1. And you had the bye in round 1, right?
Yeah. Round 1, we just played a practice game. I played against Jim, which ended up working out for the last round, like getting some reps against Lizardmen. I was kind of going to the game, testing out some things, trying to feel out like how aggressively I wanted to base Saurus's.
Yeah.
Which overall, like I got to the point where I'm like, if they're so mobile, I think you just have to base them, and hope that dodge plays in.
Yeah, so. Right. If they've got block, which I think they could take in that tournament, I think you could end up with all 6 Sauruses with block. If they've got block and you've got dodge, then I think it's like a coin flip for your player to go down. Coin flip slightly favored to the Saurus, but yeah, Sauruses are just so fast. Like unless you're setting up like a crowd surf against them or something like that, you the only way to like limit their mobility is to mark them. And I don't know, you don't really want to mark with Amazons too often, depending on how the board's going to play out, right? So.
Yep. Yes.
All right.
We didn't get to play. So our first round we didn't do anything. Our second round. I guess I can like kind of speed run through our first day. So both of our team rounds were draws, because both of my games were draws. So round 1.
So it was a loss, a win, and a draw each time.
Yeah. So the first round we played in, which was round 2, I forget what Jim was playing against, but Jim lost his round, and Juan was playing Snotlings for this tournament. Surprise, surprise. And basically tabled his Khorne opponent, because his list for that one had Varag and the Black Gobbo. And so it's like throwing multiple fouls in a turn, or bombing, or stabbing. Just every dirty trick you could have, he was using them. And against a team like Khorne, it's just like eventually you're going to spike some things and just kill things.
The Marauders are easy to kill, and the Corn Gores have like average defensiveness, and if you get enough fouls on armor 10 things, they'll die.
Yeah. So my list, I was playing, I think you could call it like the Honda Civic of Blood Bowl right now. It's just Amazon's with Dribble and Drool.
Right.
And
not the only Amazon Dribble Drool list at the tournament.
Yeah. Yes. So I also played against a vampire player.
Yeah.
In that round. It was a 1-1 draw where I think we both scored on like our drives, and then near the end of the second half I was driving down the field and just ran out of time, where like if the way that they were doing end of round procedure was if time got called in your turn, you could finish that turn. And
which is pretty generous. Usually it's dice down.
Yeah. So
and that actually hurt me, but we'll get there. It's like
So I had like gotten the ball. The first half was just like a beating. Like, I think I almost tabled the vampires. I had like casualtied 4 of the vamps between fouls and stabs, but 3 of them were generated.
Yeah.
So, but in the second half, I had basically ended up where if I had one more turn, like I ended up rolling it out afterwards, where it was like I was just 1 turn away from scoring with pretty favorable rolls. It was like a 2 die to just like surf somebody to run out and then like make 1 dodge. So, and I had a reroll left. So that ended up being a draw. And the game was like pretty close up to that point, whereas like I don't think anyone was playing like too slowly. It was just there were lots of decisions that had to get made to get
vampires
to that point.
Roll a lot of dice. Amazons roll a lot of dodges, right? Mm-hmm. And so those add up over the course of 2 hours for sure.
Yep. And then our last round of the day, Jim won his game. He was playing against Elven Union, against a player who had the self-proclaimed worst half of their Blood Bowl career. Lots of just ended turns early, lots of ones and skulls, and just overall rough. So Jim was able to get that one. Juan was playing against, I want to say it was Lizardmen, and basically almost got tabled in that game.
Right.
And then ended up losing. And then my game was against Wood Elves, and this one was another draw where I had like a unfortunate block fail in the first half where I had gotten a push and then tried to re-roll, and it was like skullboat down against a War Dancer. But I had to set I think it was Drool. Yeah, Drool was over there to like give an assist. I was trying to get Drool away from the War Dancer. So I was trying to like block and just like get it away so Drool could run out, and ended up going both down. War Dancer goes, casualties Drool, which was really bad for that specific game. It was like I wanted Drool more than Dribble for the stab to go stab War Dancers. I end up scoring. He then kicks off to me. I like try to get the ball, like fail to pick it up, and then the War Dancer like leaps over, grabs it. I can't knock it down. I don't have stab, so then he just like runs it in, and I just like end up snaking a like handoff on the last turn to go up 2-1. Yeah, because he like both at the end of the first half, I think he had like 3 players on the pitch. And then at the end of the second half, I think he might have had 3 or 4, and just like failing to hand off to score. Just
Wood Elves can score with like a War Dancer and a thrower. Like they don't really need a whole lot of stuff on the field to put touchdowns up.
Yeah. So like ending day 1 with like 2 draws that like could have very easily been wins. Was like in that like zone of like frustrating but still feeling like okay. Yeah. We were like decently positioned in the standings because we just had like a win and 2 draws.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I can recap my games basically at the same time because I played Tomb Kings both games for the remainder of the day 1, and one list had Cheney, the other list had Luther, but they were pretty similar. Like guard on some Tomb Kings. And my my second round, I alluded to this earlier, but we were tied 1-1. I had a terrible dice game. Vampires were bloodlusting all over the place, and so I never had like a good shot at the ball in that game to just kind of take it away from him. This was the Tomb Kings guy never failed to pick up the ball with his thrower, and we ended up in a situation, and I had to like struggle to get my touchdown. It was one of those where I think I bloodlusted when I could have scored a couple of times, and so I managed to finally punch the ball in. He's only got like 1 or 2 turns to try to score, and he's got like 2 turns to score, and so I just like send the farm after him, and like hypno gaze his thrower, and do like random stuff. And I had a chance to like foul Cheney out of the game, and I rolled like a 1 and a 2 on the armor break. And so Cheney ends up like standing up, blitzing through somebody, going for it into the end zone, and time is like called like right before that. And so, but I was like, I was going to give him the chance to roll it out and see if he could win the game. And he's got to make like a 6+ pass from midfield with like the thrower, and he bombs the 6 right there, gets it. Cheney catches in the end zone, and he wins the game 2-1. And I was just like, oh my god. And then in the next game, playing against Tomb Kings again, I'm actually up 2-0 in the half. I had some pretty bad dice to start with. Like my first drive was a debacle. And I think I burned through most of my rerolls in that first drive. And I failed, I don't know how many things to try to score. I failed like a 3-up pass with a reroll. I failed to like pick up the ball. I failed a bloodlust to like just run the ball in. But eventually I get there and score. And I actually take the ball from him, sack him, and run in. So I'm up 2-0 at the half. I don't present much of a defense on his drive because I'm up 2 scores. And so he scores, and so I've got like 4 or 5 turns or something to score, and so I think I can easily get this touchdown. I set up like a strong side offense and a weak side offense, but the ball scatters to the weak side, and he rolls blitz. And Luther 3-die blocks like the vampire runner that's on that side of the field and runs underneath the ball with like 2 go-for-its and catches it on its way down. I hypno-gaze Luther, and I go to blitz him with one of the vamps, and I snake the dodge with that vamp. So Luther runs down the field. I hypno-gaze Luther again. I knock him over, but the ball scatters the wrong direction. It scatters towards like my sideline. So Luther stands up, blitzes over my vampire, runs, picks up the ball, and goes for it and scores. And so we're now tied 2-2, and I have like 2 turns to try to score. And so I have to like do like this huge wedge maneuver with like all my vamps, because he just kind of like makes a picket line of like the Tomb Guardians across his field. And so I have to like just kind of punch a hole somewhere. I can't move all the Tomb Guardians out of the way, and I run like a blitzer. I run my runner over to like one corner, and the Greasy Cleats thing appears on the kickoff, and it lands on Luther. So Luther is down a movement, but Luther makes his go for it and manages to knock over and blitz my runner. That was like my primary scoring threat. And so I have to like adjust my plans for the turn and try to score with the blitzer, because I can like declare a blitz with the blitzer and then like not hit the target and still run him into the end zone. And so I end up with like a 3-up pass to him, but I got to pass over a Tomb Guardian. And then Tomb Guardian rolls a 6 to deflect the ball, and then rolls a 6 to catch the ball and just ice my turn and then end the game in a 2-2 draw. So I lost both of I lost to Tomb Kings on a 6 on the last turn, and then drew to Tomb Kings on a 6 on the last turn to round out my day, which was like, needless to say, pretty frustrating. But makes for really funny Blood Bowl stories. So Sean proceeded to win his games. And spoiler, Sean goes on to win best overall because we started round 4 of day 2 with a bye. Mm-hmm. And so we had to play one last round for round 5. And I did manage to win this game. I played against Amazons with Dribble and Drool. And it's one of those where somebody shows up with a weapon and it's like, I perfected this weapon a year ago. Like, I know how this weapon is used. I developed this technique, mm-hmm. And so he didn't really bring anything to the table that was going to like surprise me. It was a fun game because like I took the ball from him and scored mm-hmm. in the first half, and then the second half was this really ugly drive. But he was like the player who has rolled the worst against me in the last month, mm-hmm. And so. I got bailed out by dice in that game. Won that game 2-0.
Yeah. So our day 2. Let's see. We started off with a round. I was playing against orcs, and it was kind of an interesting list. So he had took guard on his biggins and had Ripper. Okay. He had 1 reroll and had skills on like a thrower and somebody else. And it was pretty interesting. I was worried at the start just because, like blitzers would block. Yeah, the strength in this match. I'm like, okay, well, this is going to be interesting. And then kick off to him. His first block he throws with a big in against a Jaguar, 2 dice, is skull both down. And he has to immediately re-roll it. So it's like, okay, so I feel good at that point where I was like not having to play against rerolls. I still got all my rerolls. I got a bunch of stuff. My stuff's harder to knock down. He took so much guard that defensive came through clutch.
I'm sure, yeah.
There were a lot of times where my opponent went to go throw a block and they're like, oh, I think this is 2 dice. I'm like, actually, this is 2 dice, my choice, because your guard doesn't work. And that was just like huge. The first half, kickoff to him. In the first half, he gets the ball and he's kind of going outside. And it's about turn 5. Goblin has the ball in scoring range. And I have to set up, he has a blitzer kind of like on one side. And I have a blitz that I can make with one of the piranhas. And I'm like, okay, I like this just because if I can wrestle down, I have enough people around that area. If the ball like bounces, it's going to be hard for him to pick up, and then I can maybe like squeeze someone in there in the meantime to pick it up and keep it from going to the goblin. So Piranha goes around, goes to blitz, throws 2 dice. It is push stumble, and I'm like, this isn't going to work. I need to get this goblin down. So I re-roll it and 2 double skulls. Okay. So I fall over. He scores. Goes to kick off again. He sets up most of his people like on the line, and then rolls perfect defense. So now he just has all his people kind of across the line. And I'm looking at this like I need to score in a couple turns. I need to open up a scoring lane to get into the backfield. And if I can get to the backfield, it's just kind of it's open because so many people are on the other side. They're all marked. He's going to have to throw too many blocks to actually get enough people over to mess with me. So I set up an assist on the corner. I go to throw a block with the piranha again because I'm like, I just need you down.
Right, wrestle does the trick. Right?
Yeah, because there's a blitzer on the end. So block isn't going to cut it. I need to actually wrestle you down. So set up an assist, go over, roll it. 2 dice, double skull, re-roll, double skull. So 6 skulls in a row, and I don't get to score in the first half to equalize. So going into the half, he's up 1-0. Second half, he kicks off to me. I'm like pretty aggressive to score because this game was taking a little bit longer just over the course of it. My opponent, I think it was like fairly new to that, playing on the tabletop. So
yeah, if all the math is done for you, then yeah.
So that was a lot of it, just kind of going through that. And I was looking at this like I can't score I can't set up to score on like turn 8 because I'm not guaranteed a turn 8. Right. So I need to score as quickly as possible and then try to steal the ball and score twice. So I'm able to score that first touchdown pretty quickly. And he goes for the second. So I kick off to him. And he attempts to go for like a 1 turn with Ripper. And he has to use the reroll for Ripper to throw the Goblin. And he kind of scatters into not the best spot, but when he goes to land, he rolls a 1. It doesn't have a reroll for that at that point.
The Goblin just eats shit right there.
Yeah, so the Goblin dies, and I'm able to like pick up the ball and then scoot around the corner, and I end up scoring on turn, I think it was like turn 7, I think which ended up being the last turn, because I had to hand the ball off to Dribble to be able to score, because I was like, I need to score this turn. My best odds is to like blitz the person off of Dribble, hand off to him, and then he runs around and pushes like once. And so he made it, went up 2-1, and that was kind of the end of that game.
Yeah.
Our last round, we played against the
Dark
team. Elf. Yeah, we played against the top team. So we were playing for top table, and how did this go? Jim, I think
lost his. Yeah, Jim played into the Dark Elf.
Yeah, Jim played against that. That was a matchup I would have actually preferred to get. My strategy going into the weekend initially, when our first configuration for the team was me, Juan, and Wayne, was I am going to be the bottom table, and I just want to try to farm people on the bottom table.
Yeah, fouling. And
the draws ended up giving me the bottom table in round 4, but then I ended up in the middle table in the last round, which I think I would have been better off against either of the other 2 tables.
Yeah.
He was just playing Lizardmen. He had 5 block Sauruses, 1 tackle Saurus. And I was able to... I casualty the Saurus out of the game on like turn 1 or 2 with foul, with Dribble. But Dribble ended up getting sent off.
Yeah.
So
not a great trade. You really want like 2 players gone before he gets sent off.
Really. Yeah. The only upside was my opponent had an apothecary, so he had to just roll for the injury. I rolled like a 14. He decided to use his apothecary, then re-rolled into a 10. So apothecary was gone.
Yeah.
The Saurus was out. So I was like, okay, I'll take that, because then it's like the Saurus plus the apothecary might be a thing if we get to a point in the game where something gets knocked out and he all of a sudden has the apothecary to keep it in.
Right.
That is scary. But my dice were not super cooperative this game. And like against a team like Lizardmen, I think like if the Lizardmen player is like really good, like they'll be able to just like punish you for that. He was able to like get the ball and like, kind of run it out. He was like up. I think he was like up 1-0, and he knocked the ball and had it a skink. My craziest plays of the weekend were in this game. So the first crazy play was he had a skink with the ball, and there's like other skinks kind of like doing like a cage on one side, and Drool had to dodge out. He made about 5 dodges to blitz across the field and dive in and stab the skink, which worked. All of that worked, and then like, knocked the skink out, and then the ball popped out. But he had other skinks that could get to it. And so another skink goes and picks it up and then runs it down the sideline. And that following turn, I send a piranha to blitz, and it's like 3 4+ dodges and a push to hit the skink. And all that works, but I don't knock the skink down. It's like a push and a stumble, and I didn't have a reroll for it at that point. But those like heroics back to back was pretty good. But it was a 3-1 loss. He went up 3-0 just because he like had started taking some players off. There was in the start of the second half, I had 11 players, and then a vicious ref got rolled. My thrower got sent off, which the thrower getting sent off was huge. That just like removed an element of the offense.
Right, and it also empties out your backfield too, probably.
Yeah. Yes. So there was that sent off, and then followed up immediately by like 2 knockouts and maybe the reminder of a casualty in there. Like, so I was just like down players at that point, and he was just kind of able to just power through. He set up. He didn't really set up a defense on the last turn after he scored. He just kind of like put his people on the line. It's like, I'll like let you get a casualty, put the ball on the side. The ball goes out. It's a touchback, and then the kickoff event is a timeout. So I get like a free touchdown at the end because I just put the ball on a blister that was on the edge and just ran it, and nobody could get to him. So,
that was you're not blanked, at least at that point.
Yeah. So that was, I guess, the moral victory at the end of that. But yeah, like I think the dice just weren't there to keep it up. Like lots of like failed dodges and stuff like that. But yeah, so our team ended up in third.
Ours ended up in fourth.
So
out of I guess 11 participating teams.
Yeah.
So not a bad turnout for us. We were both felled by the winning team, and Sean took home best overall, and Juan got best stunty. There were only 2 stunty teams there.
By default.
Yeah, by default, Juan got best stunty there. And I would say it was a really good tournament. And honestly, the location was kind of a great little cozy location. The hotel that we were at was like on a river, and there were balconies, so you could like just like walk onto the balcony and look out at the river. Lots of really good food options, up in Tennessee. So we got some barbecue one night. Just good stuff. So
yeah, no, overall it was like super cool weekend. Like definitely fit the sort of team vibe that I wanted out of the squad tournament. So that was good.
Yeah.
Props again to Ken for running
that
event.
Yeah.
Like I think it went once everything got settled. It went pretty smoothly. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then honestly, the distance from here to there, I mean, we left at like 2 or something, and we were back in time for dinner. Not a problem, right? Like that was just really solid trip overall. I think as far as value and stuff like that, I think had a lot of fun with that. So now we are going to take a small little break right here. Now that we've gotten through the tournament recaps, and when we come back, we are going to jump into the Blood Bowl League, and we're going to do the playoff deep dive. So we'll be right back. And we're back. We've got one last final regular season in memoriam section. I don't know if you wrote down notes for this or not, but I've got 4 here.
I did not write down any notes.
Oh.
But I contributed to the list in other ways.
I also contributed to this list. So first off, we've got Freeze, the Goblin Bruiser lineman, died in Jurgen's last game. Dread Pirate Roberts 2, the Skaven Blitzer, died in Juan's last game. I contributed TJ Smacks, one of Henderson's players, who was a lineman who had randomly picked up Frenzy, and I killed him for affronting, thinking that he was he could have any kind of Frenzy on a non-corn team in the league. And then it looked like you took out the block guard Jaguar Warrior on John's team, who has the nickname Nippy, whose name was like Nathipa or something like that. The Amazon random name generator pronounce or create some like unpronounceable names.
And I'll do it again. Yeah, there was one other one. Did we talk about? Or I guess we talked about the leader one on the previous one for Austin.
Yeah,
I just assumed Austin had someone die every week.
Yeah.
So
Austin took like 6 casualties in his final game, but none of them were actual deaths. Which was a departure for him, wasn't it?
One was, but I think we talked about it on the previous episode.
Okay,
now that I'm remembering,
yeah,
it's been so long. It's just so many players died on that team.
Yeah.
That,
if you look at his team, I think he probably had like 50-something star player points die.
At least, yes,
if not more.
Yeah. But yeah, that is it. That's a wrap on the regular season, pretty much.
Yeah, we had a couple outstanding games.
Yeah.
The final game was the Slee Stacks and the South California Trojans wrapped up last Friday, so that put the brackets into place.
Yes, we've got 8 games to talk about, and we can get into it. We're just jumping in as of the time of recording, we were accepting brackets for this predictions on challenge.
That link is in the Discord. I have it pinned, but we can readily give that to you if you are listening to this in the next few hours. Yeah. My playoff game is scheduled just a few hours after this recording. We've done. I've done some bracket prediction stuff using challenge in the past through some like personal projects that I've done. It's kind of fun. It's like exercise your brain, think about like how these can play out. Let's just get into what the bracket is and then kind of go from there. So
we got bracket. So the way the brackets work, I guess for people listening, if you want some frame of reference for this. So at the end of the season standings, those basically become your seeding. So if you were first in your division, you are a 1 seed, all the way down through 8. The odd number seeds from one division will then be matched with the even seeds from the other ones. So you'll have the number 1 from bracket A or division A, number 2 from division B, number 3 from division A, so on. Those get matched up, and then they're paired bracket style. So you're playing the sort of opposite seeds, so 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, that way so on, through. Yeah. Those you play your bracket, and then the 2 brackets are made. You'll have a finalist from each bracket. They will play for the championship.
Right, exactly. We opted for this some number of seasons ago. We love the way this plays out because this lets people from one division play against the other division as soon as you hit the playoffs. Sometimes there's a cross-divisional round. There was this year or for this season. Sometimes there is not. And so it's the first chance to play against someone from the other bracket could be the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes one division wins 7 of the 8 rounds.
Yeah, okay, all right. It's I'm not to draw any conclusions from that. It's Blood Bowl. There's a lot of luck involved. Not that it matters who wins, which bracket does better, whatever. No, it doesn't matter.
Correct. Moving on, we got bracket A. So first matchup of bracket A: Halfling Justice and the Electric City Maulers.
Yeah, well, so this, I think, is going to be an uphill fight for Henderson. Mm-hmm. And I think Henderson is coming into this with his team not necessarily developed into a halfling-killing roster, right? I played him as the last game of the season, and his troll did everything you could ask from a troll in that game, and his ogre was a reasonably competent piece. His ogre did bonehead at like a wrong time in that game, but he had been using a minotaur, and the minotaur was not very good, and I don't think Henderson had put the minotaur in a position to succeed. He even mentioned that during the course of the game, where he's like, I don't think I'm using this piece correctly. And so he fired it after the game and brought a rat ogre in. While the prehensile tail is certainly something that's useful against halflings, it's not going to have block. And so it could be very much a liability during the course of that game. Really, if you're playing against halflings, you want an amount of block and tackle that you can use to kill halflings with. And you need something that can kind of tango with the trees. The trees outstrength Henderson's big guys. Now, he's got 3 big guys, so he could end up in situations where he does get blocks on the trees. And if you knock the trees over and get them out of the way, then the rest of the team is kind of like easy to get to. But I just don't know that he's got the killing power necessary to take enough halflings off the pitch for him to come out ahead in that game.
Yeah, I know we had talked about it early on in the season that one of the standout developed players was the Dark Elf for the Maulers, but now you're going to be playing against Griff.
Yeah, and the Dark Elf is a pale imitation of Griff.
Yeah,
right. It's just not as good as Griff, right? Mm-hmm. And the when I played against him, it was easy to project where the dark elf was going to be on the next turn, and then I just like kept stuff in the backfield, so if the dark elf tried to make a breakaway for himself, I just had like a tackle corn gourd that could go after him. And I don't think Henderson has enough tackle to even deal with Griff if Griff takes the field in this, and I strongly suspect Griff would. I don't think he's got enough tackle to put Griff down. He's just gonna have to rely on like really lucky hits, and then he can't be like holding back on fouls. Like if Griff hits the table, I think you have to throw fouls, even bad ones, against Griff to maybe get him off the pitch.
Yeah. You want to say predictions to the end?
No, I think so. I can do my bracket predictions as we go,
okay.
And you can do as well. I think I'm picking Wayne here. I'm picking Halfling Justice.
Yeah, I also had Halfling Justice. Next matchup, I think this is going to be one of the matches to watch. I'm really hoping we can get this one streamed. Of Salesman and Gnarly Oaks, Black Orc, Old World Alliance. This is a matchup I'm very excited for. Two super solid players bringing it all for this playoff game.
Yeah, there's like 40 years or more, maybe even 50 years of Blood Bowl experience with these two players kind of combined. Now, granted, I think they've both taken their hiatuses from the game here and there, but these are two really experienced players, and these are two players that are at the top of the standings whenever we do a regular season, and so this is one where it's going to get left on the field. Like, if this game is like similar to Jurgen's game against Austin, where they had like a combined 12 plus injuries during the course of the game between fouls and casualties, I could see both of these players just damaging the other so that the next game is hard for them to win. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting matchup. Just like typically, I think you've got speed elements on the Old World team that
I agree.
Would put you better position against orcs, but positioning is like one of Jurgen's strengths from everything I've seen. Like, he is very deliberate in where he's putting his players at all times.
It's meticulous. Yeah,
you're not gonna like just randomly get a breakaway due to a player being out of place.
Right. Yeah, Jurgen's probably one of the most methodical players in the league. You could say that when somebody is that reliable, then you can like predict that, right? Like, I think that may be one of Jurgen's weaknesses, is that he won't take bizarro chances to try to win a game. That's just like antithetical to his play style. And so Sean, I think, is one of like the players that will take really drastic risks to win a game. Because I've played against, he threw a pass with Griff in a playoff game. Now Griff is like passing 3+, and if you haven't used this once per game, you can even use that for the reroll. But it was like Sean was doing wacky stuff like that because that's like what the situation required, and and so I could see him doing something like that here, where he does something completely off the wall, not terribly against his odds, like not like horrible odds or whatever, but doing some wacky stuff. I think he's just got more offensive power, and I think that's why I picked Sean to win this game. Despite the fact that Jurgen, I believe Jurgen can win this game. And I think, I think Jurgen could even do a lot of damage to Sean's team. But I think Sean's got the edge here just because of the offensive capabilities.
I have some faith in the drummers. I picked Jurgen to win.
All right, yeah.
I think if I can make a prediction, obviously a couple episodes back we talked about the tackle halfling. There is a tackle strip ball goblin.
Oh yeah. That's pretty good against the catcher. They've got the agility up. So
so I'm putting my faith in that goblin. It's going to be the MVP of that game. Okay, next matchup. So it is Empire Cup 7. Sean and Will are playing a matchup Gnomes versus Ogres in the first round of the playoffs. It's Empire Cup 8. Sean and Will are playing a matchup of Gnomes versus Ogres in the first round of the playoffs. Yeah. But teams are swapped this time.
Yeah.
So Sean's on Ogres. Will is on Gnomes. What was your prediction for this game?
So I predict that Sean wins this game because I think Sean has a slight edge over Will when it comes to stunties. Will is a stunty enjoyer, right? He's got a lot of reps with him. I think the problem is that Gnomes are very much a team with a glass jaw. And last season, Sean won this matchup with Gnomes, but it cost him everything to win that game. I think both trees went down for the next game, and it left Sean mortally wounded to go limp into a game with Ness. And Ness just kind of walked all over him because you're just missing the pieces you need to win the game. Yeah. So I think Sean has enough experience with Ogres. I think that was the first season Will had played with Ogres last time. And Sean has played Ogres both in tournament settings and in league settings before. So I think Sean gets the slight edge experience-wise. So that's why I picked him for this game.
Okay. I went with Gnomes.
Oh, okay.
Just I think my picture for this was my thought on it was just kind of, I think overall, like, I do agree that, looking at last season's matchup, the slaughter that happened was wild to see, and I think it could play out fairly similarly in that sense, where it's like the Gnomes win a game but lose everything else in the process.
I think the Foxes are relatively safe, right? Like, if a Fox is getting hit with an Ogre, that's probably the Gnome player's fault, right? Yeah. Now, it depends on how many Gnomes have been killed during the course of a game, but I think for the most part, Foxes are relatively safe, and the Foxes match up well into Snotlings. They both have like stunty, but the Fox has an extra point of strength. And the Fox can just dodge everywhere on a 2, right? So, I think the Foxes have an edge. So I think the Gnome team probably has an easier time of scoring than the Ogre team. It's just, I think the damage done, it can just be catastrophic, right?
Yeah, that'll be, I think, what it comes down to. It's just going to be, if Gnomes can mitigate the damage, I think they'll be in a good spot.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we'll see. Next game up, we have your game, Slaughterhouse 11, in the GGs of Electric City. I picked Corn to win.
Yeah. Is it gauche for me to pick myself? I think if you can't bet on yourself, then who can you bet on, right? Now, I think Chris's team has definitely got more mobility than mine. But if you look at inducements, for a minute there, I was giving Chris Morg, but I've fired a player since then. And so he's going to get 340. He could fire somebody and maybe take Morg. But if he takes Morg, then that's just like all of his inducements are in one place. He could also take like Griff. But I think between wrestle and tackle, which I have in abundance on my team, I can answer somebody like Griff. I think my team is a little bit killier than his. His team can dish out some damage, but I think I have an edge on the strength field. In that I've got four strength people and a 5 strength guy with claws and mighty blow. But I was talking earlier about people willing to take risks to try to score touchdowns. Chris is definitely one of those people. He will do what it takes to put the ball in the end zone. And so I expect Chris to score. I think I can kill enough of his players, hopefully, to kind of come out on top in this game. So.
Yeah. So that was set up for a second round of this bracket division. We can go through the brackets first. So second round, I would have Halfling Justice and Of Salesman.
I had Gnarly Oaks and Halfling Justice.
Yeah. So in my version, I had Halfling Justice winning that game.
They played in the regular season, and so I think that's fair to assume. I picked Gnarly Oaks over Halfling Justice, and that's a lot of that's because he can overdog Griff, and so then Wayne is forced to counterspell Griff because he doesn't really want to play against Griff,
right?
And then he has to try to peel enough Sean's team with like either Morg or Deep Root or somebody, and then try to win that way. But without Griff, I think your offense is really going to suffer for the Halflings. So.
And then this other game, I had Great Tree Group use Slaughterhouse 11.
So
I picked Slaughterhouse 11.
I would love for that matchup if it existed, because I played Will during the regular season, and I was a wholesale death merchant in that game. But in my version of the brackets, Return to Monkey versus Slaughterhouse 11, and I actually don't love my chances against Ogres because I think he can actually beat me to death. So I picked Sean to win that round. Where the Ogres just brutalize me. I don't have much of a team. The thing is I can see it being very similar to the Tomb Kings matchup that I played during the season. That was a bad matchup for me. And so this team's got way more Mighty Blow, and the team is just extremely developed. Plus, he'll still get some inducements. So I think I lose that matchup if that is what comes to pass. And so I picked Return to Monkey.
Gotcha. So now we're just completely separate. We're completely off of each other's predictions. My prediction for the finals of this bracket would be Halfling Justice and Slaughterhouse 11, and I had the Corn taking it.
Okay, yeah. So. I would give him so much money in that game. I'm giving him I'm doubling his team value or whatever.
Yeah.
More than. So I picked Return to Monkey over Gnarly Oaks in that because I think once again the Ogres just beat their opponents to death, and both teams are going to be similar in team value, so I think inducements are kind of off the table for that game. And yeah, I just think at this point that Ogre team is just really scary.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have Return to Monkey. I have Slaughterhouse 11. That'll be interesting. Main reason, you got a lot of tackle on your team.
I do.
So
yeah.
I think and I do think there's a point where you get to diminishing returns with some of the inducements a little bit to where if your team overall just has a depth of solid. If you have 11 or 12 solid players in your roster, even if inducements bring you to having 5, that's still overall you're spread out over multiple players.
Well, no, I think the stuff that was good versus the gnomes is largely good versus the halflings, right? The main question is can there be enough Morg, Giant, Deep Root in the way of my team to keep me from getting to the halflings, right? If I can weed out some halflings, or even get a lucky removal on a tree, or Morg with the blood spawn. If I can get a lucky removal in those situations, then I end up way ahead in the game. I think it comes down to which valuable pieces get removed first. And one of the things that I in retrospect I wish I could have developed on my team a little bit more was more guard, because that was something I desperately wanted in the matchup versus Ness. I just didn't have enough of. So I was having to throw really unfavorable blocks. Now I threw a lot of 2 dice uphill with Wrestle, which is secretly very powerful. That's one of the things that gnomes excel at, is being able to throw a 2 die uphill, because you either get a push or a wrestle. And so if you're playing against something that's got more strength than you have a 1 in 3 chance of falling over to a skull. But if you get the push or you get the wrestle, then you get to take that piece out of the equation for a little bit. And that gives you some wiggle room. Against Ness, I had 2 chances to surf mummies, but he actually opted to take like wrestle and stuff. Like he took his mummy going down as opposed to getting pushed out of bounds. So yeah, I mean, the problem is that like you can't really do that to trees because they got stand firm. You can't really do that to like the giant, because once again stand firm. Yep. So
yep. On to the next bracket and see who would face our selected people in the finals, the championship. First matchup, we got Bad Moon Rising and the Might of Asgard.
I picked Jim here. Jim's got the experience edge. Austin's team, I think, is lucky to be in the playoffs at this point, based off of the losses he suffered during the league.
Yeah.
I think Austin has a lot to be proud of for this season, because I think crawling into the playoffs with like the shattered remains of your team is something I can empathize with. But I think Jim's got the edge here.
Yeah. Especially just because of, like, I would say these two players are the players that have, like, lost the most. Just SPP combined between the two of them.
Yeah. There's probably some teams in the league that don't have as much SPP as these two teams have had killed off of them.
Right. Yeah. I also had Bad Moon Rising taking that one. Next one up, Book of Grudges in Southern California, Trojans.
So I talked to Ide about this, and Ide was swagger before this. He was feeling pretty confident. He's like, I'm gonna beat Chase up, which is the type of thing you say before you lose a game. So I don't like Ide's chances personally. I think Chase's team is pretty well developed. I think he's got elves on the team that are there to die, and then he's got a whole bunch of really good elves, and Chaos Dwarfs just do not have the volume of tackle that they used to.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, 2 instances of tackle on this roster is not going to be enough.
I think the Bull Centaurs are set up to have a field day, but even if the Bull Centaurs have incredible games, I think Chase can still win the game.
Yeah. Chase also has shown that he is not afraid to foul with that team.
Yeah.
And if the Bull Centaur with an armor down gets put on the ground,
it's in trouble.
It's going to be bad.
Yeah. It's in trouble. I picked Chase for this matchup.
I also picked Chase. Right. Next up, Zero Luck Chucks and the Jolly Rotters. Zero Luck Chucks, probably incorrectly named.
Yeah.
Where they ended up.
He ended the season on a heater.
Yeah. I had Dark Elves winning this one. I think that team is just like very solid.
It's it's the leanest team in the league.
Yeah.
Because of the no rerolls, right?
Yeah. So
if his luck holds out, then I think this team is like pretty well positioned. It just really depends on luck.
Yeah. Yeah. Kuba told me a little bit about one of his inducement plans, which I will not divulge on this podcast. But if he does it, I think it's going to be... If he is able to accomplish what he is setting out to do, I think it's going to be a bad day for the Undead.
Yeah. I think Clay should be proud of his performance this far in the league. I think he had like a really tough schedule towards the end, and he kind of acquitted himself pretty well. And... I think this is like a bad matchup for him. He's long professed his hatred for elves, and this elf team is an extremely elf team.
Yeah.
So,
last matchup in the first round: the Rotten Beaches and ROUS.
Yeah, we were talking about how this is the most mortal team Juan has put into a playoffs in quite some time. I think John actually, this has been like kind of a season where Juan has received some comeuppance for some past Blood Bowl sins. And John owes Juan for 2 playoff losses. One of those in the finals, where John failed to pick up the ball like 7 turns in a row with his Undead team. So I think John is like spoiling for a win here. John gets money headed into this game. So I'm thinking that means dribble, right?
If I had to guess. What else? I mean, he could just throw us all off and pick Estelle.
Yeah. So I mean, the thing is like Estelle would be like an incredibly interesting player if she didn't cost exactly the same amount as dribbling.
Right. Yep. I also picked the Rotten Peaches for this. Sounds like you picked the Rotten Peaches.
I picked the Rotten Peaches, yeah.
Yep.
I think that's more historical. And I think if we're just talking about like people who get lucky in a game, I would always pick Juan over John. But I think John. I think it's John's time to shine. Mm-hmm. I think it's his time to shine. All
right. So I believe we've got the same going into this next round. So top Baton Rising California Trojans.
I picked the Trojans.
I also picked the Trojans.
Oh, look at that. Yeah. So on the topic of people who owe it to other people, Jim owes a playoff loss to Chase. I think this dates all the way back to League Number 1, where Jim won the game because of a prayer to Nuffle in the first drive, and Chase couldn't foul him. And so Jim was able to stall the whole half against Skaven. And so that's why Jim's name is on the plaque, season 1 out there. So I think Chase's team is extremely well developed. I do not think Jim has the tools to defeat this Elven Union team at his disposal. Now Jim's a great player. Not saying he can't find a way to win a game like this. I just think Chase has got the edge. I'd give Chase the nod here.
Yeah, that's pretty much the same reasoning I have. It's like, I think if you could go back, if you rewind back to week 2 and not have the werewolf die.
Yeah, and that werewolf at this point is block, dodge, tackle, mighty blow, whatever. Who even knows what else could be on it at this point? But you put sidestep, right? Like you have a 5-skill werewolf in this game, and like the whole league is just chasing that werewolf, just trying to fill its shoes, you know. But that's not what happened. That is not the way it played out.
Yeah, unfortunate. All right, next up we got Zero Luck Chucks and the Rotten Peaches. Who you got?
I picked the Rotten Peaches.
I also picked the Rotten Peaches.
Oh, look at that.
Yep. This is way less exciting of a bracket compared to the first one.
Right. Just that we're like completely in agreement here.
Yeah.
I think the amount of dodge that John has is a problem for Coop.
You mean all of it?
Yes. The fact that everybody's got it. And I think John's team is lean enough where Coop won't get to take crazy amounts of inducements headed into that game, right? That's the nice thing about Amazons is like the relative low cost of your players. I think John will probably have a slight advantage there.
Yeah. All right. Bracket finals. The Trojans, the Peaches.
Okay. I picked the Peaches.
I also picked the Peaches.
Okay, all right. He'll get money again, most likely, depending on what the teams look like, right?
Yeah.
And so I like playing Amazons and Elves, especially if you can take Dribble and Drool, because then you get to just play an absolute like removal game, knock somebody down, foul them out of the game, rinse and repeat, and then score at your leisure.
Yeah, I had attempted to kill a tackle piece, but was not able to do it in my last game. So apologies to Chase. But yeah, I could feel pretty much the same way. It's like I think the Amazon scene is just a powerhouse.
Yeah. I mean, I think if the ball ends up in the hands of like a Jaguar warrior, I'm not sure what the elves are supposed to do, right? You put the ball on a 4-strength person, they walk down the field, elves are bouncing off of it. You have to spend so many of your skills to keep your elf players alive. Chase has one really good blitzer, but like if both people have like threats on their team, Chase has like the dirty player and the blitzer, and so that's a very short list that you just have to mark out, and then your team is like in the clear. You're just totally safe against whatever else is coming. Whereas like John's whole team is going to be hard to kill. You could kill like the 2 best players on John's team during the course of the game, and then he'd still have like 3 or 4 other players that are like hard to remove.
Right.
So,
yep. So that brings us to our championship predictions. So my championship prediction was Slaughterhouse 11, the Rotten Peaches, and I'm picking the Peaches.
Okay, I forgive you. I had the Peaches versus the Ogres, Return to Monkey, and I picked Return to Monkey.
I can definitely see that. Just, you're getting lots of good blocks, and Amazon Armor is not the most resilient.
Yeah,
so.
You don't have to remove too many people, and the team value thing is kind of like a wash there, because I think both teams will end up similar values. And then it boils down to the Ogre team having the ability to win turn. Mm-hmm. That's what it boils down to, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I did a quick. So as of the time that we were recording this, we had 10 brackets submitted, and I was going through and just looking, and the Rotten Peaches were the most frequently picked.
Ah, okay.
3 out of the 10 people picked Rotten Peaches.
Yeah. One of the top 3 records for the season. Mm-hmm. So
that is also part of it.
Yeah.
Picking.
They lost. I mean, they didn't lose any games.
Exactly.
They drew or they tied. And so in playoffs, if you get to a tie, then you go to overtime. And the fact that your whole team has dodged, the fact that you got so many rerolls built in really helps in overtime, because you don't get your rerolls back.
Yeah. And the fact that your team is proven to be fairly resistant to damage up to this point. Your odds of going into overtime with 11 players is big.
Yeah.
Because you're not getting people back. You were stuck with whatever you turned 16 with is what you get on 17. So, yeah. So we had 3 people pick the Rotten Peaches, 2 picks for Slaughterhouse 11.
Okay. I appreciate that, everybody.
Yeah. Also some picks for, we had someone pick RUS. There was a bracket suspiciously titled, I Have to Bet on Myself, that picked the GGs of Electric City. Don't know who that could be. We had a pick for the Gnarly Oaks, the Return to Monkey, and also a pick for the Trojans.
Okay.
So,
all right. It's pretty even spread.
Yeah, good spread. That's there's about half the teams got someone believing in them. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's sick. And there'll probably be some other brackets that trickle in before the end of today. Yeah. It's probably too late if you're listening to this later on for you to get a bracket in, but the brackets will close right before the playoff game begins later today. So.
Yeah. That's. Yeah, it's been a bit of a long episode, but a lot to talk about. And it's kind of a double feature, since we weren't here last week. But,
yep, exactly. I think we can close out with a couple notes real fast. The show is produced by Scott Jensen.
Is he going to say anything?
No, he's looking.
There we go. Yes, there we go. Now you have a speaking credit,
and put that on your IMDb, and then. We have the Goblin Mayhem.
Yes.
Upcoming May 3rd.
Yes.
And the Palmetto Cup, June
28th.
28th. And so both of those are on the table. We'll definitely promote those we'll definitely promote Palmetto Cup next week or whatever. So.
Yeah. Also, there will be a season 9. This is the end of season 8, so season 9 will be coming up.
Yeah, and we'll probably start opening up the submissions for that soon, because we are changing things up a little bit. We discussed that several episodes back, but we'll have more info with that coming up, especially as people get eliminated from the playoffs. People will start chomping at the bit to try to get... ready for the next season, right? A lot of people have their eyes looking towards that season because they are excited about the new team registration for that. So
also, if certain people in charge of tour play get eliminated early on, that might expedite things a little bit.
Yep, that could.
But, if you've made it this far, appreciate you for listening. Wherever you're listening, because we are now on pretty much any platform you could possibly be listening to us on.
Yeah, we probably should open the episode up with that as well. There's a lot of things we could have really started the episode with, but we got there eventually.
Yeah, strong closing is what matters.
Yeah, that's true.
Especially, we're talking about playoffs.
Your ABCs.
We'll close it strong.
Always be closing.
Yeah, so if obviously we've been on YouTube, but you'll be able to find us on any sort of podcasting service that you could want at this point. And wherever you're listening, we love all of you equally, and would also love equally for all of you to give us good reviews, give us listens, subscribe, follow, whatever iteration of that you have on your favorite platform. We will take it.
Yep, sounds good to me.
And next time we'll be back with some playoff results. Probably not the full week, but we'll be pretty close. We'll have some games to talk about.
It looks like a good chunk of the games are going to be happening this upcoming weekend. So I'll be excited to see how those play out. My game is tonight, and then the other side of my bracket is playing, and so we'll just get to stare at each other for like a week while we wait for the rest of the bracket to finish up before we can actually play. Yeah. And you know, so provided you even make it there, I'm like talking as if I've already beaten Chris. That is not true, by the way. He's. I'm not. I don't wanna like jinx myself, but Chris, he's put some touchdowns on the table this season. So
absolutely. Well, yeah. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you all next week.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.